where I last left off a couple weeks ago when talking about these games, funnily enough, listening back to the playback, I wasn't actually happy with what I was saying, specifically on, how lives can add difficulty to a game. And when that happened, I got a little bit dejected, and I actually didn't want to upload the videos that I put out, or at least that one video, but decided to. And when I did, an idea hit me that I can only thank God for, because really, if there's any good idea I have, it comes from God. So, with that being said, the idea I had was to use your mistakes to strengthen yourself. And the example I have stems from back, maybe, no, not 10 years ago, but close to 10 years ago, when I was getting into fighting games for the first time. And during that time, I wasn't good at, shock and awe. It was just me eating loss after loss, game after game, until eventually I played a game called Blazblue Central Fiction, and that's primarily the fighting game that I spent the most time with. But to paint a picture of what it was like for me to play Central Fiction for the first time, the game looked blurry, and I don't mean this in like the hardware wasn't good enough for me to run the game, or the graphics weren't good. I mean, whenever I got into a match with another person, I couldn't make out what was going on screen, because the adrenaline in my body would just make the game look fuzzy, and I couldn't distinguish animations between one another. So, after a certain point, after losing a long amount of time, I decided to then take my losses and twist them. And what I mean by that is, instead of focusing on my losses, I ended up taking a small aspect of them that I can have for a victory. So in this case, what I did was I wanted to practice anti-airing, which, if you didn't know, it's basically when a character jumps at you, you hit them with typically an uppercut that knocks them out of the sky. And you have ruined their offense when that happened. So for however many matches, I would forego basically doing everything else and just practice anti-airing. And I want you to know, I still lost. I lost a lot. But in doing that, I made the losses less stinging. And, how do you say? I eventually got to the point where I could actually make out what was happening in the game. And the reason I'm telling you this is basically I'm telling you this because in my last video, hearing what I said about lives and how I botched up my own delivery, I just didn't want to upload the video, as I mentioned earlier. But in knowing that I botched it, I can take away the few things that I did correctly in that video, which, well, was my delivery. Because even though I write some things down for these videos, I'm mostly not looking at it. Like right now, I have an entire thing written down about what you can do to take your losses and turn them into victories. And I did talk about one of them, but I'm freestyling for the most part. So in that regard, it's not as cookie. I don't know how to describe it, but it's basically not as cookie cutter as it could be. But to get back to what I wrote down, no one started perfect. If anyone watching this is familiar with Michael Jordan, because we are that far away from the time when he was the king of basketball, he never started out perfect in his time, playing basketball. In fact, he was rejected. I don't recall whether it was for like a high school team or something, and then he went back to practicing, and that's really how it is. We're talking about Naruto. Well, not Naruto. Naruto's on screen right now, but Naruto himself was a perfect example of someone who was rejected, and had to go back, had to keep practicing until he could actually become something worth value. In a sense, he did take his mistakes and whatchamacallit, improve from them, because if I'm not mistaken, the clone jutsu was something that Naruto admitted to be extremely, like, his worst jutsu. He can never pull it off correctly. And now, here we are, one of his signature techniques is the Shadow Clone Jutsu. And of course, you know, we have Rock Lee, who is every Naruto fan's image of self-improvement. And, you know, I don't blame him, because doing those 1,000 kicks on that stump, man, that it really takes dedication. And another thing I wanted to talk about here is, you know, to free yourself of the burden of perfection. My God. The burden of perfection is something that plagues me and has plagued me for far too long, especially considering the fact that how I used to go about making YouTube videos. So, because I know that there's no attachment between this channel and the last one that I was a part of, I used to make a lot of scripted content on YouTube, and, you know, everything was as neat and tidy as it can be. There was no stuttering. I had a script, and it was nice in a sense, because, you know, I'd essentially be doing the video multiple times, not only to get the right take, but in also writing the video. So basically, videos took twice, if not 4 times as long for me to get them out. And while it was neat, while it was tidy, while it sounded professional, in the end, I really didn't like doing that in the long term. And even though I couldn't see it while I was still in the middle of making those videos, I really just didn't jive with what I was doing. But, you know, in making those videos in the first place, I had adopted a level of perfection that I thought my content had to be. In which case, when I was told to do this YouTube channel and to just make it live, you know, that brought in a lot of hesitation, because I don't have much experience with doing live content. It's a very new thing for me, which, you know, it adds to the whole lives video that I did once upon a time a couple weeks ago, and why it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. But, you know, one of the best things about starting new, starting afresh, is that nobody has an expectation of you. And if you're the only one who gives an expectation of himself when, you know, you're just new, then that is a problem in and of itself, because there is no reason to put that kind of pressure on yourself, or in my case, me. And so, you know, also wrote down that the righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up and rises again. And man, that's so accurate. And that is, I also feel that is, like, personally the thing of a winner, because anyone can try something and anyone can fail. And to go back into my Blazblue example from earlier, I failed a lot, like more times than I can count. If I were to show you my win-loss record on Steam, that's a lie, because I played a lot more casual matches, and it's like my win-loss record is probably hard negative by now. But nevertheless, I just stuck with the game, kept playing it, and eventually got to a place where I can say that, yes, I understand this game. Personally, I know that I'm not the greatest Blazblue player. I just really like the game, and honestly, that's for years all that I was aiming to be. It was just a competent player at the game. Maybe one day I'll decide to kick it up a notch, but as of now, I'm happy enough where I'm at, if that makes any sense. Also, because fighting games are kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? They're a time investment if you really enjoy them. And I really do enjoy them, which is why, you know, I can't really invest that much time into being a really good Blazblue player, because staying on top of a game like that is similar to staying on top of a sport, in which case you got to practice, practice, practice. And when you think you're done practicing, practice some more because your competition is right on your heels. Granted, that game is, again, almost 10 years old, and the likelihood of the competition being that fierce after 10 years is not likely. But nevertheless, a sport is a sport, even if it's a video game sport, you know what I mean? But yeah, so that was my way of saying that to whoever's watching this, if you made a mistake in something, if you feel that you can do better, well, first off, you probably could do better. But that's not a means of me chastising you. That's a means of me saying that you still got room to grow, and that in that growth, you gotta find the little things that make you happy along the way. You know what? Again, since Rock Lee is on screen, like that time he pulled that massive tree root out of the ground, and Neji couldn't do it, and Lee was saying, "I did it! I did it! I did it!" You know, he wasn't the greatest, the splendid ninja he thought himself to be, but you know, one step at a time. That's how this journey goes, and that's how you reach the finish line. So yeah.